Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Gawkner. This is Both Sides of the Aisle. I represent the political center and have on the political right, John Dougal.
Hey, great to be with you. It's been a while.
Yeah, been a while. And on the political left, Shireen Gorbani.
Hello. And hey, listeners. So glad to be back with you in real time.
Yeah.
Happy August.
You guys are my friends, and I prefer to have really friendly, upbeat, joyful conversations, but there's a lot of things going on in our world that aren't joyful, that are hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's just get them over with and move on into other things in the program. But Shireen, do you mind setting up what you're seeing in Gaza right now?
Yeah.
Set that up for our listeners.
So I think listeners know, I believe many of us share a deep concern about what feels like, now we're 2 years deep into a conflict that is resulting in starvation of the Palestinian people. And I would say increased violence and destabilization of this corner of the world generally, right? And at the hands of a government that is, we don't have time to get into what is going on with Netanyahu, his perception in his own country. But I do feel like what has happened in the last few weeks, largely driven by images that are insufferable to look at. And that just pales in comparison to what individuals must be trying to live through on the ground. People are starting to say it has to stop, and people on the right that have been long defenders of Netanyahu or Israel generally can see plainly that this has to stop.
You feel like a tipping point's about ready to hit.
I do. What do you think?
I'm there as well. I have a nephew, at least married my niece, who is actually working there in a military way, but for a private contractor to help get food into the Strip. So it's affecting my family. I've got a niece with a young child whose husband is living there trying to help with the situation. Kind of interesting. John, quick comments.
Well, I'm also going to just flag, I think you two know my concerns, but I'm going to say here we are about 2 years in, Hamas still has hostages. And so a big part of this rests on Hamas, that rather than coming to the table, negotiating peace, releasing the hostages, they're still holding them. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's, from an Israeli perspective, is untenable to put down your arms when the hostages are still,
Yeah, it just begs the question. October 7th happens, and look at all of the rounds of, sadness, sorrow, pain, tragedy.
Yes.
Really stunning. Yeah. Okay, let's go to another topic that's of interest. You have the president now announcing new tariffs on dozens of countries. Interestingly, Canada
great deals
sees this jump from 25% to 35%. Mexico's given a 90-day extension. Brazil hardest hit with 50% tariffs on most of its goods. Where do I go with this? There's this saying that Trump has been able to defy political gravity just because of the times, but will he be able to defy economic gravity? That is the uncertainty, the increased costs, the tax that he's imposing on the American people. Can this really work, John?
Well, and some have said he has defied it right now. Some are thinking, oh, this is working. See, it's great. He's a genius. I'm not one of those who buys into this. I think in the long run, economics wins. And that's just where we're at. The other thing is I'm not a fan of these quote unquote free trade deals, because usually they're not free trade. I got government bureaucrats managing trade in whatever arrangement it is. But we've got Trump who's doing these high level concepts rather than really really in-depth trade arrangements. And then it gets whipsawed back and forth. And even if you got a deal, is it really gonna quote unquote last? And I'm sorry, I got problems with going after Canada, one of our biggest trading partners. And it's just, originally the excuses were about trade and tariffs and all sorts of things, punitive trade practices. Yeah. But now it's about other policies. It's like, just come on, let's focus on getting a good, strong economy.
With you. I care about our border countries. I went to 2 soccer matches in the last week at America First Field, and they were both Mexican teams that our local club played, Real Salt Lake, and the Mexican fans showed up in droves. It was beautiful. Yeah. And they sang the Mexican national anthem, the U.S. national anthem, and it felt like how it used to feel, where we were loving, where we respected each other's cultures, where we had a healthy competition, but it was done in a spirit of progress, for the human condition and all those kinds of things. Anyway, I felt guilty sitting there with all these Mexican fans that we're using our economic might to go thump down. Yeah. Shireen, we should give you a voice here.
I'll just say that I think that this continues to produce a lot of instability and chaos in our broader markets. I think that it is a plan without a rationale, without a clear orienting reason. And I also have to say, just a reminder, tariffs are a tax that the American people will pay, right? And we're starting to see it. It's showing up already.
The revenue's coming in.
But it is if you're not paying close attention to your grocery prices, if you haven't been out to look at things like appliances, prices are going up.
Yeah. So the economic gravity became really clear last week with the jobs report. Yeah. Lots of news there. Just to put some numbers to it, in May originally, well, here's the way I'd say it. As an economist, I've kind of memorized that the U.S. economy wants to create about 250,000 jobs a month to kind of like stay at a good, healthy pace. So that's sort of the benchmark. If you're below 250, it's a little off. If you're above, it's a very good report. Well, the original report in May had us at 144,000. That was revised down to 19,000. Yeah. The original report in June was 147,000, revised downward. The May one was revised to 19,000, the June to 14,000, and July came out with a 73,000 jobs report. Ouch. Ouch. Resulted in the firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner.
So what do you think?
Heads will roll.
Yeah. But let's talk about what that really means. What does it mean when we go after individuals who are responsible for the data? And what should we expect from an administration that has no problem lying to us?
Yeah. Well, it's a stunning thing to me. Our federal statistical entities are the gold standard for the world. I'm speaking specifically of the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Department of Commerce. They put out data that is used for all sorts of public and private decision making. I wrote in my notes, it's the mother's milk of economic understanding. And these people are statisticians, purists, nerds in a complimentary way. They do not manipulate these numbers, John. I'm looking at you straight in the eye, and you texted me about it over the weekend. They don't manipulate numbers. They love their models. They love to let the data speak for itself. So I think this was very unfortunate, and I think the president will pay a price for it.
Yeah, and I'm one of those that thinks the president should have more ability to hire and fire folks. But when we're getting rid of somebody, not because they did a poor job, but because we didn't like what they said, that's where I have problems. Because what happens with this administration, it's going to tit for tat down, we ratchet it back and forth, all on and on and on. We look at things that happened with, called the Clinton administration, then the Bush administration doubled down on it, and then Obama, and then, we seem to be going in one direction rather than, this, I tell folks that valuable tool you create becomes a weapon in the hands of your enemy. Yeah. And so right now the president may not like what happened with the commissioner. Yeah. But then does this set a precedence, which now it becomes a very political job of what the numbers are. And rather than saying, okay, these are numbers that we don't care who's in the administration, this is just the facts that we see, versus now it's driving a certain narrative and a certain agenda for political reasons.
Yeah. I have to tell you that the defense of the president would be that the revisions were so large. And sort of like, that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't pass the sniff test. But I'm telling you, most of this data is survey collection data. These revisions always happen. And what happens is the reason they get revised is they get a more complete response. Yeah. So their first report, they don't have all the data in. And then they get another, and then they get another. And it's perfectly consistent, this jobs report, with what we would expect. And that is that all this uncertainty has quelled hiring. Yeah. Like, who's going to make big bets, make commitments to employees in an environment where you still have high rates, where you have risks on inflation, and where you are sort of poisoned by where these tariffs going? Yeah.
I guess a couple things come to mind for me. I think one, especially you, Natalie, traffic in this data. Like, this is important, and we spend time with it.
Traffic in a good sense.
We're interested in it, right? Like, we spend time with this data. But I keep thinking of the saying, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. People across this country are losing jobs.
I have never heard that saying.
They are losing jobs. So you can tell them, we're going to revise these numbers, or this is rigged. But at the end of the day, if you have lost your job and you do not know how you're going to put food on your table for your family, whatever this president decides to do to manipulate the data that's coming out is not going to change people's material experience of not having a job anymore. And jobs are being cut in manufacturing, or certainly we saw all these federal jobs lost. This is happening to people in our very own state, and it's getting harder and harder to find a job in this country. So you can change the numbers, or he can manipulate the numbers all he wants, but at the end of the day, if people don't have jobs, they're going to feel that, and whatever the president is telling them, it won't matter.
Yeah. So the Fed last week decided not to lower interest rates. They held constant. This was on Wednesday. The jobs report didn't come out till Friday. A lot of people speculate that had they seen the jobs report, they might have budged a little bit. But they're in such a difficult situation. This is why the tariff policies are so dangerous, because they're so inflationary in theory. So we got to see if that plays out. But that's what you would expect. And yet interest rates are higher than they would be for a normally performing economy. And so, you've got to challenge. And then, John, you have the president calling Chairman Powell a total and complete moron, a numbskull, a disaster. Like, I don't like that either.
No. I mean, go after whatever the policies are, but, what does the personal tax have to do with this? Well, So I want to ask you a question because Chairman Powell made this comment, back last week when he was there with Trump, and he was talking about a one-time bump and not wanting to see it be inflationary and stuff. But explain that to the average individual, because that one-time bump, they consider inflationary. So he's acting like there's a nuance between a one-time bump due to tariffs and ongoing inflationary activities.
Yeah. Well, so let's say you put in a tariff and you increase the price one time, and then does it continue? Right? Is it an ongoing higher price, or is it a one-time effect on the price level? And so a lot of economists think you fill it once and then you adjust, and then you can go back to, so you're targeting 2%, you bumped it up, and now you're back to targeting 2%. Okay, that's the notion of a one-time. And the thing that's true,
the average folks will say, no, the price went up and it's still up, and therefore it's inflation.
I used to buy ice cream cones for 10 cents. When I was in elementary school, I'd stop at the local Arctic Circle, get a 10-cent ice cream cone. Of course, you'd now pay $4 for it, $3 for it. That's just how the price level is always increasing. It never goes back. And that's because it's so dangerous to be deflationary. But our incomes rise as well. And so we're okay having prices increase over time. We just want them predictable. Yeah. Okay, hey, let's take a short break, and then we'll come back. We've got a lot of other interesting news to talk. Natalie Gochner with Shireen Gormani and John Dougal. Stay tuned. You're listening to Both Sides of the Aisle on UPR. We love to hear from listeners like you. If you would like to send us a comment, email bsotapodcast@gmail.com. That's bsotapodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Shireen Gormani on the left.
John Dougal on the right.
And Natalie Gochner in the political center. This is Both Sides of the Aisle. I want to talk about public radio, public TV, Shireen and John.
Yeah.
We've got this.
Elmo.
Yeah. We've got this law that has now been signed that clawed back $1.1 billion in funding for public broadcasting. And now, as you would expect.
The big, beautiful bill passed.
Yeah.
And then a rescission came where they pulled back on funding. It wasn't much, but it was some.
But the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is going to shut down.
Yeah.
And it begs the question, how does that affect Utah?
Yeah. So, I think listeners who are hearing this on the radio heard there was an emergency fund drive. We know that this is going to impact local public radio. But there's also just kind of this greater sense. I think it's really important to understand the biggest impacts that this will have are across rural communities that already are suffering from a lack of diversity in the media, in the radio stations that they have access to.
Yeah. So, Shireen and John, CBP, this is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, founded in 1967, has 1,500 local radio and television stations. So, and to Shireen's point, it's the rural entities that are going to hurt the worst.
Yeah, but I look at this and go, how is this a fundamental role for the federal government? Okay, we've got a federal government that's out of control, spending out of control on so many things. This is just one example of why is the federal government even in this? I can get, if we're into radio and we're broadcasting into Cuba, I can understand that from a national security or an international relations activity. But this, I don't think, is the proper role of federal government.
Yeah.
Couldn't disagree more.
More to come. But let's bring up Sesame Street.
Okay.
What do you know about Sesame Street? I mean, a big
Watched
brand.
it as a kid.
Yeah.
Big brand. What's going to happen?
I always say I was raised by a single mother and also a television, and I spent a lot of time watching Sesame Street. I think it is an invaluable touch point for a lot of Americans. I do think that Mr. Rogers taught me a lot about the kind of person I wanted to be in the world. I think this is a fundamental loss. I hope it finds a new home, but again, it'll be one that is paywalled, that will be more difficult for people to access.
Yeah. You've seen Big Bird in the Disney family.
Well, I just wonder, is Disney going to pick up Big Bird and the Disney, expand the Disney brand with Sesame Street?
Yeah. Okay. Another issue. This is happening in a western state. Texas Governor Abbott. It's a whole gerrymandering scheme, right? The state of Texas has put in place.
Usually we redistrict every 10 years coming out of the census. Every once in a while a state does something different, But
there's 50 Democrats who are proposing to leave Texas.
They've left, I think.
To block the vote.
Yeah.
And the governor's threatening to
eject them
from the legislature. Yep. And you have other big liberal states like California, New York saying, you do this, we're going to do the same thing. So we'll balance it out in Congress. This is so unhealthy for our institutions.
Well, why is Texas doing it? Because they think they can shift the House 5 seats to the right. But then the argument is if California does it, it shifts it 5 seats the other way. And,
we didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And we just created more rancor and division in our country.
Yep, that's right.
Tore down some more institutions. But at the same time, Shireen, we've got our president greenlighting a White House ballroom to redo the East Wing starting next month. I will tell you that for people who have spent a little bit of time in the White House, it's not that nice. You with me, you guys?
Well, it's not that big.
It's not that big. It's not that nice. It's more historical than anything else. So I get the idea to invest. I just don't trust President Trump's style choices.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. I also think, spending $200 million on a new ballroom in the East Wing, ripping out the rose, like all of these things that are happening, literally covering the inside of the Oval in gold, while millions of Americans are poised to lose health care, to me, says everything I need to know about this administration.
Okay, let's jump.
Now, the argument is they'll say it's privately funded, so not $200 million of taxpayer funds. But then again, the costs will probably go up and everything else. And at the end of the day, we'll be talking about $1 billion ballroom.
Yep.
Let's jump to some local news. We've got Governor Cox declaring a state of emergency as wildfires in our state. This heat, the dryness. I was up in Albion Basin in the last week. Hiked 2 11,000-foot peaks, mind you.
Congrats.
But
you're a youngster.
It's so dry and dusty, and we need some rain. And then the air quality with all this smoke in our air. John?
Well, and this gets into the debate about, how do we take care of our forests? I think all of us agree that it's tragic. It's unacceptable. You go down there in those communities in Richfield and so forth, and you just see the impacts of the fires and the bad air, and you look and say there's got to be a better way of dealing with this, and how much of this is Mother Nature and how much of this is we can manage our forests better. And for decades, many Americans have felt like the federal government has mismanaged the forest. And I don't know if better management truly would reduce the impact of these fires. But it's one of those things that I can walk through and go, okay, this does not look like a healthy forest to me.
Yeah. Shireen, you want to make a point?
Yeah, I would just say that in terms of mismanagement, a huge part of that is funding. And now we've just seen more of that funding cut. And I frankly don't think that the state could in any way find the dollars that it would require to properly manage our federal lands.
Yeah. Complicated story here about a Senate president involved allegedly in a law change that helped a teen charged with child rape. I don't like this story because I don't like it because it's easy to jump to conclusions without having full information. And I know President Adams to be a man of honor, and I've watched as these things have transpired in the past, and the media lights people up, and it sometimes feels like in an unfair way. So that's my take.
So the story is that last year, an 18-year-old related to Adams was accused of having sex with a 13-year-old. And I just want to really stop there for a second and say that is, I'm sure, difficult for people to hear, very triggering. The law is not retroactive, but
important point.
It did ultimately impact the sentencing that went to, that this other adult now, but like near child, right, incurred. This to me really gets to a bigger issue of the importance of good communication, for example, sex education, ideas around consent, really having a robust and healthy dialogue in our community around what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, and trying to create ways to protect children that are meaningful. And I'm uncomfortable with this whole story. I'm really terrified for children that are in sexual relationships.
Very difficult to talk about in a 1.5 minute segment, for sure. John, anything you want to add?
Well, this one of the broader things this gets into is the whole, what are the penalties for crimes? And we want to lock them up, and we want to, punish folks that do bad acts. And then all of a sudden, when it gets to be friends or family or much more personal, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this justice, we want mercy now, and a balance between justice and mercy. And it's something that as society we will always be searching for, is what is the right, because we want to throw the book at these folks. And yet in this case, whatever this case happens to be, all of a sudden, maybe not so much. Maybe that's too much. And it's also the thing is, at what point will whatever punishment steer somebody down a path rather than correct the action and bring them back into, good standing in society where they're productive, versus launch them on a path of crime. And then we're just paying the expense of continually incarcerating them.
Just a plug
whatever it might be.
Open up conversations with your family. Try to create safe and trusting spaces.
Okay, another news item. We got a new rail facility that's opened up. This is part of our inland port. I heard Governor Cox comment on this, and he made this statement that it's a bigger deal than the 2034 Olympic Winter Games. And it kind of caught my ear, because I'm like, there'll be 3 billion people that watch opening ceremony. That's a big deal for our state. But the governor's point is that this rail facility will facilitate global commerce. It'll take trucks off the roads. It will stimulate advanced manufacturing nearby. And so it's a really big long-term plus for the state's economy. I can see John just thinking, what is John thinking? I have no idea.
I am just sitting here going, the irony of this, of Trump on the one hand is, from my perspective, wanting to get rid of really international trade and bringing it all back domestically. At the same time, we're building an inland port to expand international trade.
Yeah. And it can be domestic. It can be domestic trade too, coming through this port.
But a big part of it is really designed to go after that international trade. They're coming in Long Beach and they're getting trucked.
Yeah, what happens is the big container ships bring in, containers to Long Beach and SeaTac and whatnot, and they put them on rail and they do their customs clearance in Utah. So to your point, a lot of it's international. Yeah. Shireen, anything on that?
I would say tariffs probably aren't going to help this, but here we go.
All right. Let's do another one. This one's a tricky one. And John, tricky in part too because of your past position. But we have a Utah CEO who spent state grant money on vacations, political donations, and so on, according to the current state auditor. This is something called Impact Utah. It's associated with the Utah State University and the Office of Economic Opportunity. I think it's the Manufacturing Extension Partnership was the channel for the funds. Yeah. But this seems like a pretty bad actor here.
Yeah, it totally sounds like a bad actor. Kudos to Auditor Cannon and her team. This is one of those challenges as an auditor. There are always more risks out there than you have
identified
resources and staff to be able to go after. And so kudos to them. But too often we see programs like this where there's lax oversight, where you get bad actors who are basically, from my perspective, defrauding the taxpayers.
Yes.
Using this as a piggy bank to their own personal benefit. And it's unacceptable. So kudos to her and her team.
Yeah, I would just say I think it's really concerning when we see that this person also was funneling, political donations to a number of high-level Republicans in our state. The whole thing just stinks, and I'm glad that there's some accountability moving forward now.
How about the U.S. Department of Agriculture announcing Salt Lake City as one of 5 new hubs for a DOA facility? I'm thrilled about it because I think we deserve more of this, and I wish they'd put a Department of Interior hub here instead of in Grand Junction.
Yeah. Well, I sit there and I go, okay, why do I have the federal government in this? So I'd rather get them out of D.C. and into the state. Yeah. But then my next question is, why do I even have them? And why can't the states and
I don't know where the other facilities are, but I'm sure it's because of our central location. But they have a lot larger agricultural states to be in. But there's not a lot of larger public land states. There's only one, Nevada. And Interior should be here as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So the other hubs include Raleigh, North Carolina, Kansas City, Missouri, Indianapolis, Indiana, Fort Collins, Colorado. I would not say that these, in my experiences, are the heart of agriculture.
Where's Idaho in the West?
Yeah, I mean, where's Nebraska? Like, I have lived in these states, and when I think about food production, when I think about kind of farming, that is not what Utah's known for. California is.
Yeah, more to
Florida
come.
is.
Well, and then to bring this back to Utah, I always ask the question, why do I have so many of these state agencies,
Here.
Yeah.
Department of Ag and Food and DNR on North Temple in Salt Lake City rather than scattered throughout the state?
About 45 seconds left in the program. Senator Johnson making news. He's really upset with the Alliance for a Better Utah. They've been using his name and image in fundraising campaigns, going after him. Johnson says, hey, this is not protected political speech. And he's basically saying this is a misappropriation of me and my likeness.
Of his likeness, his image, his name, everything.
And the
for fundraising
organization,
purposes.
instead of issuing a retraction, just put out his whole email and went after it again.
Well, I think he should go after him hardcore.
I'm with him.
This is not a happy group. This is
I
a
think Senator
mean-spirited
Johnson
group.
is a pretty savvy guy, and I applaud what he's doing here.
I think when you're working to dismantle education, when you are, I think, on the edge of some of the most divisive elements of our politics, I would like you to act better.
All right, well, that's a wrap from both sides of the aisle. Natalie Gochner with John Dougal and Shireen Gorbani. Programs produced by Anthony Scoma. Thanks, everybody, for listening.